So now we've worked with the mineral kingdom, the plant kingdom, and the animal kingdom, and we're down now to the kingdom of man, or humanity. And that is drawing people. And so many of our fairy tales, of course, you know, they have people in them, and we want to have the children show these people doing the different things in the story, and to feel comfortable with drawing the people. So I'm going to show you a very basic way of representing a person. It's a starter point from which all the other people can be drawn. Again, as I mentioned before, you can use your hand to decide on the scale of the person or animal or whatever you're putting on your picture. And I'm going to make my person about this big. And so and again, I would suggest that when you first start with the children, you do it with the yellow. But since it's very hard to see the yellow on the page here, I'm going to use the red. Using Mama Bear, or possibly, let me see, I'm going to see. Using Mama Bear, whereas with the plants we started with the seed and moved up. With the animals, we were working more with the horizontal, with the gesture of the spine, and their spines tend to be, of course, more horizontal. With the humans, we're starting with the head and moving down. And that's why it's a good idea to have a sense of the scale of the human that you want to draw, so you have an idea of where that head is actually going to be. So because I'm deciding on this scale, I'm going to put the head here. And I suggest making the head very small to start with. Now, one thing that you can have the child do is to take their thumb, or we can take one of our fingers, and just smudge a little bit of the red color onto your finger and make a little smudged area that will be the head. I don't know if you can see that little smudge. Now, the reason I'm suggesting this is because so often when I first start teaching children how to draw figures, and they start with the head, they end up, we've got our ground line, they'll do a head with a great big thing like this. It'll be way too dark, and it'll be way too big, and then where do we go from there? You know, and so I say we start with a little smudge, and then we can always change it if it's too big, or we can work with that. And then I'm going to go over it very, very lightly, but it doesn't really need to be much darker than the smudge was itself, and I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. Now, using Mama Bear, right underneath the head, there's the head. There's sort of an imaginary neck where the shoulders would be. We're placing the Mama Bear. And we're going to bring it down. Now, it's not going to come down exactly straight. I suppose you could start one pretty straight. But I have the slightest curve. The slightest curve with Mama Bear. And of course, you could take it down just as far as you want the person tall. If you go lightly, you can always bring the ground up if you make it too tall, or you can, of course, bring it down further to adjust it. But this is the most stylized, simplified human figure here. It's somebody maybe with a cloak on, or a gown, or a robe, or a cape. And the head, okay? We don't know what gender the figure is, and the only way we have an idea that it's probably an adult is because of the size of the head in relationship to the rest of the body. Those of you who, with your little children, you can look at them and you can see how large their heads are in relationship to the rest of the body. The head doesn't grow that much over the years, whereas the height does, And so that relationship between the head and the body changes. Okay, so we have a slight curve. This person is facing this way. And now we want to animate it some more and give it arms. Okay, now our arms are connected to our shoulders. And so we have, again, just as we had the crayon, the Mama Bear crayon where the shoulders are, now we use that same and bring the gesture out. And here is an arm coming out. Now that arm could have been stretched out further. And then if I want to have a hand that's receiving, it's this cupped up shape. I have essentially three ways of drawing hands. We would have, let me show you. We've got the head and an arm. And you can have one hand that's cupped up like that, which is the receiving arm and hand. You can have another arm out here, and the hand is down like this, which is the giving. Okay? You can also have a hand which is a tiny little ball, and that is like a fist. And this can be something that's holding something, say a staff or a sword or a tool, or maybe you have two arms from two different people, and then there's this larger fist here between them, which means they're holding hands. So you have this gesture, and this gesture for the hands. Okay, so here we have this very simplified person. Whoops. Okay, so I made a mistake. So I'll just pull it out. And maybe I want to put a cape on this person. So it's a royal person. Then you think about the colors that are associated with that. You want to do hair. It's just a suggestion of hair, just a little bit darker than the color that's there. And the top of the head and the back of the head. Don't worry about hairstyles too much. You could have, if it's a person with long hair, you can do a long braid coming down here. Or if it's somebody with long hair that's loose, it can just come down like this. You don't have to show feet, of course, if they have a long cape. So with this next person, we're going to do another head. And this time I'm going to maybe make the top part with the blue. And it's just going to come down, but not all the way. And this can be like a shirt or a jerkin. Then I can have, using Mama Bear, I can make a leg and another leg. But see how easy that is? Never is it a matter of outlining. We're always using the mass of color, the area of color to define. And here we can, I'm trying to think of a, so one arm could go here. We could have an arm doing another gesture as well. Let's see. You can put a belt on the person if you want. You don't have to get into much detail, but it depends on what. Maybe you want to do boots. but never outlining. It's just using Mama Bear a lot for the figure, and maybe this hand is holding something. Let's see. Okay, so we're going to turn this into more of that could be a working person. And what's his other arm doing? You can just come down. And this is something just for you to practice over and over and over again. Just see how simple these simple little strokes can come together to make a figure. Maybe this person has a beard. And maybe this person has a cap on. No faces are necessary. I'm going to show you some images here. You see how simple this little fellow is? This little gnome? It's just this triangular shape for the jerkin and the little boots, the arm reached down, and and again, you're using that gesture with the crayon to make it thinner at the top. And then all the trees in the back are just clouds of blue and yellow. Here again, look at the simplicity. He's got his little walking staff. See the tree? The light leaves at the top, the darker shadows, just a few branches. The ground line, of course. The hat. And there's telling a story. Isn't this image is telling a story? We want to know now more about who these are, who this person is. What's he giving to the gnome, or what's the gnome giving to him? Okay, here I've done a whole family and all different kinds of people. We've got mother and father and the children, and you see the proportionally they're different. Their heads are pretty much the same size. The baby is just the little head in the holding gesture of the mother. The royalty with the crown. The witch, has a distorted form. Her spine, and I guess I was playing around with the hat. I've got two different kinds of hats going on there with her. I was going to start another figure. Okay, this is a picture showing different positions. We have the little girl. This is actually Anne Sullivan and Helen Keller, when Helen is first touching Anne's face, but the body is sitting down with her dress is coming this way, so it's sort of a reversed S shape. Don't even show her feet. I could have if I wanted to. I showed sort of like a bun to indicate her hairstyle. And then proportionally, Helen Keller is standing there next to her with her wild hair, and she's touching Annie's face. Here we have the trees that are giving a place to the story, and a few little birds which bring in more of a sense of life. Little bird down there. See, the birds are just done with a simple little stroke. Here we have a version of Francis. I put this cowl here to show that it's his robe that he wore. And instead of hair, it's just the band of the tonsured hairdo. Here's a situation where I've got the cypress trees off the page. And I know I said not to do that. Sometimes with trees it's possible, just like you have to with the hills. But generally speaking, you want to keep things all on the same page. Here he's relating, of course, to the Wolf of Gubbio. Very stylized wolf, but the gesture of the wolf shows how he's showing deference to St. Francis there. When you are working with the second graders and you're telling stories of saints and of heroes and of people who have shown great courage and great compassion, you might want that person to stand out. With St. Francis, if you look carefully, you'll see that there is a yellow nimbus. I actually just took the crayon and went around it with yellow, pressing harder, so that he seems to be glowing. And that is just a way of stylistically suggesting that this is an unusual person, an outstanding person. Here we have the sword and the stone. It comes a little bit later, but we have some animation there. And I wanted you to see how simplified this animation is. You have this line here that's pulling the sword, so there's this sense of tension, and then this leg is supporting him so he doesn't fall over. Again, very simplified background, just a suggestion of trees. The stone I could have made even darker, but I wanted the emphasis to be on the young boy. And there, of course, instead of just doing a shape and letting it sort of hover, it's a stone, and so you need to try to bring in a little bit of shading. And since this is for not a first grader picture, I think this was second graders, the second semester second graders, that we can start showing some shadow. And even under the feet of the character, make a little bit darker, make the grass or the ground that they're standing on a little bit darker, and it brings them down to earth. Otherwise, they appear to be floating above the surface. Here is a picture of an interior. Now, this is again a stylized way of showing an interior, but for young children, that's all you need. There's no getting trapped with worrying about perspective and vanishing points and things. It's almost like a stage set. It's all very two-dimensional. And we have the ground line, which is also the floor. The figures, you see how simply they're drawn. By putting a window here and implying this hill on the outside of the window, gives a sense of perspective that way, that there's dimension beyond the room. I put this beam in here because without it, it was rather dry, and I wanted it to have something a little bit more containing about it. I put a border around it, almost like a frame, which is the walls, but it shows, it holds it in as if it was the room. You do your figures first, and then you can do the doors, the windows, the table, the chair, and everything more proportionally. This is, you probably will recognize an illustration for Frau Halle, or Mother Halle. And here we have, again, just the simplest gesture. It's almost like an X, where the child is reaching up to pick the apples. And here in the doorway we have Frau Halle, which is again just this beginning shape that I gave you. It's almost like a cone or a triangle with the head on top of it.